notepad and pen. Next to him was a partner at the firm, and my mentor, Francis Kirsch. Even though Francis's presence was unnecessary, the old guard wanted to keep an eye on me. Since I'd made partner less than a year earlier, I didn't mind. I liked Francis. He had guided me since I was a summer associate. He had helped me avoid internal firm politics and fed me good projects along the way. I knew he took pride in my work, in what I'd become, and enjoyed watching me perform. I waited for Judge Platt to grant me permission to proceed, and when she did, I stood a little straighter, planted my feet, and began. I had notes on the podium in front of me, but I didn't need them. I knew what Judge Platt wanted. She wanted a legitimate basis to dismiss the plaintiff's case and clear it off her docket, because that was what all judges wanted. They had to manage their caseload and keep it at a reasonable level. Every day, hundreds of lawsuits and motions were filed, and if judges didn't resolve them quickly, they'd soon be buried so deep that they'd never get out of the hole. Your Honor, as you know at a very basic level, every lawsuit must state a valid claim. The defendant, Bioprint Pharmaceuticals, filed this motion to dismiss because the lawsuit lacks that most fundamental requisite. Judge Platt was what our law firm's database referred to as an active judge, meaning that she didn't just sit and listen. She asked questions and challenged attorneys to debate and consider various hypotheticals. It didn't take her long to interrupt. But Mr. Daly, Judge Platt leaned forward, the allegation is that thousands of children diagnosed with cancer took your client's drug and died. She shook her head ever so slightly, suggesting sympathy for the plaintiffs and playing to the audience. Behind me in the gallery, there was a reporter for the Wall Street Journal and another from the New York Times. The rest of the seats were filled with lawyers with similar cases wanting to see how the arguments played out, as well as law clerks, new associates, and courthouse voyeurs simply wanting to see a show. Judge Platt continued, "That seems like a prima facie basis of negligence to me. Whether the families can ultimately prove it is another thing, but to stand there and say that your client should never be subjected to discovery or investigation seems like a stretch." Judge Platt folded her arms across her chest and leaned back in her big leather chair, clearly indicating that she was going to be skeptical of any response on behalf of my client. I didn't become flustered or defensive. I knew what needed to be done: acknowledge the emotion, redirect the court's focus toward dry legal issues, and shift the liability to somebody else. The last step was key, something that most corporate defense counsel forgot. They'd get bogged down in case law and statutory interpretation. They'd act cold and indifferent to the injured, like a technocrat, and ignore the fact that a judge was human. I understood that it was important to Judge Platt to think, even if it was an illusion, that the victim would be made whole elsewhere. The judge needed to go to bed at night believing that, although she had dismissed the lawsuit, the victim would still be okay, because another lawsuit could be filed in a different court with different claims and heard before a different judge. She needed to believe that she did no harm, and that was an essential element of any good corporate defense. Your Honor, I paused, shifting my focus to Harold Cantor, the victim's father. And then I looked at the attorneys on either side of him at the plaintiff's table. They worked on contingency, and they wouldn't get paid unless they won. Although they considered themselves to be top-flight litigators and trial attorneys, they were more akin to gamblers. Once the cards turned cold, they would fold and settle for pennies. As rehearsed, I held their gaze and took in a deep breath. Then I spoke softly and deliberately. I think what happened to Megan Cantor and the other children was an absolute tragedy. I bowed my head. Like any good actor, I had the ability to make this gesture seem spontaneous and sincere. She was too young to die, and I can only imagine the pain that her loss has caused Mr. Cantor and the rest of her family. Their sadness is real, their pain is real, their anger is real. With step 1, acknowledgement of the emotion, completed, I turned back to Judge Platt and held out my hands. Almost apologetically, I said, "But that doesn't mean we can ignore the law." My argument moved away from the emotion and now focused the judge on the dry legal arguments that favored my client. They have filed a class action, I said.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.